get started right here. Hi guys, thanks for joining us today for the webinar Wednesday. Today we're going to be looking at SOLIDWORKS CAM and CAMWorks and basically what are the differences between the two and basically which CAM package is right for you. So gender for today, basically the first thing we're going to look at is what's included with the different versions of SOLIDWORKS CAM and CAMWorks. Obviously with SOLIDWORKS 2018 we now have SOLIDWORKS CAM. There is an included version called the Standard version, and there's a professional version. And then we have CAMWorks, which is essentially the same software as SOLIDWORKS CAM. It was actually developed by CAMWorks and built off of the CAMWorks interface for SOLIDWORKS CAM. But we'll look at the different packages and the different options available to you, so you can kind of figure out what type of equipment you have, what type of parts that you machine, and which version would be appropriate for you and the things that you do. We'll also try and look at some typical parts that you may program with the different versions, so you can kind of see the difference between what each version is capable of doing. And then lastly, we're going to talk about the promotion that's running at the moment. So right until the end of March, I believe, the end of the first quarter. We've got a promotion running, great deal, so we'll give you details about that and what's going on there as well. So we'll get right into it. Like I said, SOLIDWORKS CAM was announced in 2017 at SOLIDWORKS World and was released. The official first release of it was in the 2018 Service Pack 0. So everyone on subscription has access to that. If you're not on subscription, update, you'll get that CAM package straight away. And what that includes is those kind of little panels that you see there. It includes basically 2.5 axis milling, some 2.5 axis premium toolpaths, typically things like a tapered wall for roughing, like a waterline finish, that type of thing is also included. So some 3-axis toolpath that typically just does X, Y, and then drops in Z. So that's all included. You've got your simulation, you've got automatic feature recognition to identify geometry in the part, and there's a SQL database that runs in the background that stores all of how you program your part. So you can save your strategies to a database so you don't have to repeat the same steps every time you come across the same geometry. And that's what they call knowledge-based machining. On top of that, there's one called tolerance-based machining, which will analyze the MBD tolerances or the dim expert tolerances in your models and actually determine different machining strategies based off of that. So a simple example would be, hey, I've got a hole, I want to maybe bore it if it's a certain tolerance, a higher tolerance, ream it if it's an even higher tolerance. If I don't really care, it's just a through hole for a bolt, I'll just drill it. The software SOLIDWORKS CAM will actually recognize those tolerances on your MBD dim expert tolerances in your part file, and then you can then automatically trigger different strategies to go and machine it. So go bore it, go rough it, go drill it, go ream it, for instance. The other options that come with the standard version is there's a tool called the Universal Post Generator that allows you to create your own post processors for your machine. Hawkridge actually has a bunch of library posts on our website that you can go and download for free. If you just browse to the product section and then go to the CAM post processors, there's a whole bunch of posts up there that you can download for free. But if you want to create your own posts, the Universal Post Generator is a great tool for doing that. Has a bunch of templates in there that you can start tweaking, modifying, and it's a really nice interface for making kind of simple edits. It also comes with a full in-depth editor called the EC editor, where you can actually go and change the entire structure of the post and the full output there. And then lastly in there we have SOLIDWORKS CAM and C editor. So that's essentially a communication tool to CNC equipment. It's also where we can go and make edits to the code. We can backplot the code in there as well, so we can actually backplot the G code to verify the G code matches what our toolpath says. And the typical machines that we're looking at for this sort of package is 3-axis mills, XYZ basically, routers, water jets, profiling type equipment, plasma tables, lasers, Obviously, it depends on the posts and that sort of thing, and obviously you're not going to rough on a laser or a plasma table, so some of your settings might change in the software, but that's the sort of typical machinery that you'd be running with this sort of package. It is for individual part files only, so if you're doing just, hey, I've got this gear shape profile, I want to water jet out, sure, by all means. If you wanted to nest it, then you would have to go up to the higher level package, which I'll talk about in a second. But the type of toolpath that you can create in SOLIDWORks CAM Standard, pockets, slots, holes, buses, facing features to clean up the SOP, thread mills, tap cycles, drilling, and all that sort of stuff. The 2.5 axis Premium is an area rough, so it's what normally you would use for like a 3-axis roughing strategy. A Z slice, so waterline cuts it's sometimes referred to for finishing, so that's where you can do things which aren't just straight walled, you can start doing tapers and things like that. And then a flat area to go and clean up flat surfaces. And the key features of this particular version and throughout all the different versions is the automatic feature recognition, that knowledge-based machining, the tolerance-based machining, the NC editor, and the post. If we could take a look at the next level up, basically what that builds on is it builds on the stuff that's available in SOLIDWORks CAM Standard. And in SOLIDWORks CAM Professional, what we get the ability to do is we get the ability to look at the assembly machining. So if you've got a particular part that you want to do a production run on and you put 3 vices in the machine, just like the image kind of shows, you put 3 vices in the machine and you want to mill all 3 at once, basically you can do all that sort of stuff. 4 and 5 axis indexing. So on top of the other stuff, we get the ability to do 4 and 5 axis positioning work. It's sometimes called positioning, sometimes called indexing, 3+2, that type of thing. We can run those. We also get turning capabilities. So if we want to run our single spindle lathe, and we get some high speed roughing options. And you can see the colors on the right match the kind of colors on the left to show you which different versions are coming through. The other thing that is included is their ability to use CAM configurations. So the CAM configurations allow you to say, in the same part file, do a milling operation and a turning operation if you've got a part that requires both. So let's take a look at some typical examples of the type of work that you can do with SOLIDWORks CAM Standard and CAM Professional. So I'm currently running CAMWorks right now just to make it easier to switch between the different settings here, but essentially the interface is exactly the same, database is the same, everything's the same. It's just basically just to show you kind of the ease of use throughout all the different versions here. So the only difference is it says SOLIDWORks CAM up here instead of CAMWorks. But our toolpath basically lives right inside the model. So that's one of the key benefits of using SOLIDWORks CAM or CAMWorks. We don't have to export it to any third-party system. All of our toolpath lives in the SOLIDWORks model. So if there's any changes to the SOLIDWORks models or anything like that, the toolpath is going to update. And that's great if you do a lot of similar parts, like if you've got a product family and you want to kind of automate the programming side of it. If you're familiar with design tables or DriveWorks Express or DriveWorks tools in SOLIDWORks, you can actually link all of the toolpath to the different configurations and things like that in SOLIDWORks CAM and CAMWorks. We've got a quick question here. I'm going to answer that one towards the end because it's going to be a bit more involved, but we'll go through it and then I'll get to that question. But basically, all of our toolpath lives in these trees right here, and that's just turned on by our add-ins up here. So you'll get a SOLIDWORks CAM add-in in 2018, and you've got CAMWorks obviously down at the bottom here as well. So the type of items that we can do, this is obviously where we can select our equipment. So in the standard version, you would get the mills. You wouldn't get the 4-axis and you wouldn't get the 5-axis because that would be the professional version. Same thing with the turn machines, the lathes basically. This stuff is for the mill turns that we'll look at in CAMWorks, and obviously CAMWorks also supports wire EDM as well. But in this case, we're just going to look at the mill inch. We have our set of tools that we can build to match the stuff that we have in our shop. We have our post processors, some information about the post, how do we want coolant parameters and things like that, and some information about do we want to do indexing the part or not. So if I'm talking about just SOLIDWORKS CAM Standard, the one that's included with your subscription, we'll just basically program it like it is here. Stock manager, we can go and define the stock material, obviously a bunch of different materials in here. There's about 1,100 in the database as it comes. You can add and customize this any which way you want to. And it will allow you to trigger the feeds and speeds off of those materials. As far as stock goes, you can use a variety of different profiles. You can do a bounding box where it wraps the geometry. You can use a sketch to define it if you've got like an extrusion or a bar stock or something like that you're trying to mill. STL files, and you can use a SOLIDWORKS part file as the stock as well. I'm just going to use the bounding box option in this particular case. Coordinate systems, we can define our coordinate system at any point in time. We can basically go and pick on a particular vertex if we've found a particular hole or something like that we want to go and program off of. We can grab basically a corner of the part file. If there was a corner up here, if we're indexing off that, or sorry, and setting the 0 over here, we could basically use this as a reference point. Or we can use the corner of the stock as well. So obviously if our stock's a little bit bigger, we might want to be indicating off of the stock there. And then we can change our directions to any which way we want here. So if we want to go X is I don't know, parallel to this face, for instance, or rotated around basically, or here we go. We'll go Y is, sorry about this, Y is along this axis over here. There we go. So if that's basically us setting and indicating off of our stock material over there. And going back to the items that we talked about, the automatic feature recognition. That's one of the key things about CAMWorks. It can save you a whole bunch of time. It's going to recognize automatically just by clicking a few different options here. Facing operations, perimeter cuts, holes, pockets, bosses, that type of thing. And it will find them in different setups in here. So you can, if you're manually flipping this over in the mill, on a 3-axis mill, you can still create the program for each op in the mill. But it's scanning the model here. I'm not basically having to chain any edges together or anything like that. It's looking at the geometry for me, registering, okay, it looks like 2 holes aligned to each other. There's a little pocket in the top. It looks like a counterball hole, going to generate a counterball hole. So it finds a bunch of counterball holes in here for us, a bunch of slots in here. So we've got some pockets on the back here, some pockets on the front, a whole bunch of drilling here. You can control the options and the items that it finds in the options menu in CAMWorks. You can tell it to automatically face, automatically do a perimeter profile and things like that. But basically it's finding the different setups from different directions in here. So we've got the holes and things like that found. We've got some strategies in here with some kind of complex threaded holes that go all the way through the bore to get the hydraulic fluid to the cylinders here. If I want to add any of these features manually, I can always go and choose a particular setup and go, hey, I want to face across the top, for instance. I go choose a face feature, grab the top profile, say, hey, I've added 200 thou to the stock, so it automatically registers that. Okay, there we go. We'll drag that up to the top. If I want to do a perimeter cut, sure thing, not a problem. How do I want to machine it? Well, I'm going to rough it out in 3-axis in here using the 2.5-axis Premium option. So I just want to do a finish pass to clean up the outside walls, and I only want it in the first setup in this particular direction. Maybe my Z depth can only go to around here, basically. Maybe we want to do that, I don't know, up here somewhere. Going back to the 2.5-axis Premium toolpath that we talked about, those are inserted using the Multisurface feature. In SOLIDWORKS CAM Standard and Professional, you will see just the area clearance, Z level, and then area clearance, Z level, and flat, I believe, options in here. The others are all related to the CAMWorks that I'm currently using right now. But we go and select our geometry that we want to go and program. So I'm going to grab the different surfaces here. Again, drag our feature up closer to where we want it, maybe up beneath the facing operation there. And then what I can do is I can use my knowledge base. So CAMWorks comes with a database that's preloaded with a bunch of information. And it basically allows you to go and quickly generate a whole bunch of operations for all of these different features. So what it's doing is it's looking at things like stock material, it's looking at the type of geometry that you're doing. Are you doing a hole? Are you doing 3-axis milling? Are you doing a pocket? Are you doing a slot? All those different conditions it's going to look at and go, okay, well, I'm going to generate these operations. So basically, I've got a toolpath in 3 clicks of the mouse here that I can go and start looking at and simulating, backplotting, and verifying what it's doing. So we'll just let it generate there. And this is basically a toolpath for this brake cylinder. So we've got a facing operation here. We've got a roughing operation that goes in and basically roughs the material out. Finish operation, and a whole bunch of contour milling and everything else for the different counterbores and all this sort of stuff in here, drilling operations. So, and this is all included with your standard version of SOLIDWORks CAM. So obviously might want to simulate it, check it out, see what it's going. So it's going to go and rough out all the different material in here. Got a couple of air passes that we might want to adjust on the area clearance here, but we're going out, roughing out all the material, and we can simulate what that toolpath is going to give us, what the finished result is going to look like, what the surface finish might look like on the actual part as well. So we can look at maybe changing tools and adjusting that sort of stuff. And as far as the tool selections go, the software will memorize what tools that you use every time you go and program certain types of geometry. Or you can intelligently link it to triggered off the width of the geometry or the length of the geometry. Say, hey, take the width times it by a value, take the width times it by a higher value, and create a range for a particular tool that you can put in that particular geometry. So that's basically in CAM Standard. What I'm going to do, I'm obviously not going to go into all the details of programming this particular part, but you have got full control over the toolpath. In the operations here, you can go and change all the pattern types, all the entry positions, feeds and speeds, switch your tool out in here to any tool that you want to use, change all your entry methods and things like that. But going to the professional version, what that gets you is you get the ability to go into assemblies. You get the ability to do 4 and 5 axis indexing. You get the ability to use high-speed roughing called volume mill and turning. Now I've got an example here of such an assembly, and if you're at SOLIDWORks World you went over to the shop floor, they had a Haas UMC 750 with a vice machining the shifter. Basically same setup in here. In this case we've got an assembly where we've got the vice, we've got the trunnion here for the Haas UMC, and then we've got the front side of the caliper and the back side of the caliper over here. Now in here, I've just gone through, we've selected the parts in here, so it goes, okay, it knows this is the part that I want to program, this is the part that I want to go and program. I've got my stock in here, my coordinate system I can obviously define. But the nice thing is, if I'm doing a production job, maybe if I'm doing something where I've done a prototype, proved the concept, customer is happy, and then they go, I need 50 of those and I need it next week. You put 3 vices in your machine, you don't want to end up having to reprogram them. You've already proved your code out on your prototype. You're happy with it. It's a simple click of right-click on the part and then go import the part data. And I can blend it with any stuff that I've already done so far or delete any existing work out. But this will actually take the program from the part file, import it into the SOLIDWORks assembly, and it will link to all of the different setup directions. So this is where I'm talking about the indexing side. We've got some holes that are coming in the side here. for the brake lines and the hydraulic fluid. Basically, those need to be indexed, so we can calculate the new positions to go and index the table to get them into the correct orientation. And all we have to do is regenerate the toolpath, and we've got essentially our program imported from the part file into a model. And in this case, this is a 5-axis machine, so we're tilting everything around. So we've got our facing operations here, and it automatically will register the orientation that you program them in. So it puts the facing on the right part at the right instance, which is fantastic. I don't have to hey, put the toolpath on this particular one because your orientation is this particular way, or put the toolpath on this particular part because your orientation is in this particular orientation. It does all of that for me. So I've got a program in here where I can now do all the indexing to basically get my part programmed and out the door. And obviously we can, in assembly, we now have the ability to go and specify things like fixtures and things like that. So we can go and tell it, hey, these are fixtures, this is a fixture in here. And then when we do simulate, I didn't select the trunnion here, but I did select the vise. But now we get a vise in here where we can see if there's any collisions with any fixtures or fixture plates that we might have a problem with here. So, and we can set our work offsets to the different positions. So, and this is using CAM Professional to do all of this. The other thing that you get in CAM Professional is the ability to go and use a high-speed roughing toolpath. So if we go and try and find some of the roughing toolpath in here, so maybe we were looking at roughing this particular area out, and we wanted to try and get it done as quick as possible. You get the ability to use volumill. So volumill, some people refer to it as tricoidal milling. But essentially what it allows you to do is use more of the flute of the tool. You use a smaller step over, but balance the feed rates out by basically cranking up the feed rates to balance the load on the tool out. And it will automatically adjust for as it enters the material. It will slow the feed rates down, so you're not getting a hard jarring on the tool, which causes tool wear, chatter, and everything else. It kind of slowly enters the part, feeds up high feed through the cut, and then we'll go to an even higher feed to loop back to its first position. The other nice thing about using volumill is SOLIDWORks CAM and CAMWorks basically integrated a feeds and speeds editor into the interface right here. So if I switch it to operation, some of this technology, you might be familiar with pocketing routines like pocket rough, pocket in, pocket out, that type of thing. You might be familiar with the feeds and speeds, but when you start going into new technology, you might not be as familiar with the feeds and speeds that you can run these types of toolpaths at. And that's where this comes into play. It basically is registering the tool that you're using, the flutes that you're using, the material that you're doing. So it's pulling off my 6061 T6 in here. The hardness, I can go and adjust if it's a different hardness of material. The coating on the tool, you can control how well you're holding it, which is obviously going to basically slow things down or speed things up. Spindle tapers, what holder you're using, and what your machine maximums are. So, and this will work for even the oldest of old machines, 95 machines, old Matsuras, Fadals. You can run this on any different machine. You don't have to have the latest and greatest equipment. But what it gives you is this ability to basically be more conservative or aggressive in here. And what it will do is, once you've changed and you're happy with the settings, it will go and basically modify the parameters for you, and you just hit preview and you update your toolpath. So this is another great option that's included with SOLIDWORks CAM Professional and higher. One of the other things that you get when you go to CAM Professional is the ability to use these CAMWorks configurations or SOLIDWORks CAM configurations in here. So if I was either testing toolpath out, I can create a copy of this particular configuration, and it will basically leave the other one as it is. So I can use it for program revisions if I'm kind of trying some new things, I can use it to switch between mill and the lathe, and a whole variety of different things. If you've got, like I said before, DriveWorks, or you use design tables to create, or you just manually create a bunch of SOLIDWORks configurations, those SOLIDWORks configurations will be linked to your CAM configuration. So rather than programming the same thing 15 times for one slight change of diameter or bore size or something, you can basically go and program it once and then copy the configuration across and then let it do a rebuild, and away you go. You've got a program that's, even if it's 90% done, it's a lot better than having to reprogram it from scratch. The other thing that you get with SOLIDWORks CAM Professional is the ability to basically, let me just find the plot right here, to do turning programs. So I've got a caliper assembly that I have here, and if I wanted to program this this brake piston here, I can now switch to my lathe equipment. So I'm now programming on the lathe. This is in SOLIDWORks CAM Standard. It's for single spindle lathes. So things like a Haas ST, ST10, ST20, that type of machine. Obviously a lathe tool crib, lathe post. Your stock is now obviously cylindrical. We can go and add material to it and so on and so forth, increase the diameter, put a bit more material on the front here, maybe put a whole bunch on the back so we can clamp it and we've got some room to do a cutoff. Coordinate systems, obviously now refer to lathe coordinate systems, but the feature recognition still works the same. I can hit the extract machinable features. I don't have to go and click on geometry. I can, but I don't have to click on geometry to define what is a face, what is an OD profile, what is an ID profile, what is a cutoff, and so on and so forth. Using the database again, in this case for doing a turning program, and I've got something now where I can maybe go and simulate my toolpath and do my cutoff, and I've got my part machine for the lathe as well. So those are all in CAM Standard and CAM Professional. When we want to go up to the next level, what we talk about is the CAMWorks Standard. So in the image right here, SOLIDWORks CAM Professional would end right here. And the last two, subspindle here and rotary milling, is where you would go to CAM Standard to get those. So if you have a main spindle, subspindle, you have something like a Haas DS machine, DS30 SSY type machine, dual spindle, you will get the ability to do that. You will also get the ability to do wrap milling as well. So anything like a wrapped pocket, a wrapped slot, engraving text around the cylinder, that type of thing, that's where you would get CAM Standard. So if we're looking at this brake cylinder piston again, maybe I don't want to do a cutoff, maybe I want to do a face on my subspindle. Basically, I can switch it over to a face feature so that this now becomes a face feature on my subspindle. And then basically, I switch it over to subspindle here in my spindle controls, go and regenerate that one here. And I've now got a program for my subspindle as well to go and machine the stock away. And obviously, I changed my stock down since I don't have to machine all that sort of stuff. And we also, with that version, we can then put in spindle transfers as well. So if we just want the subspindle to come over, grab the part, take it to the home position, we can program our subspindle transfer, orient our spindles to C0, rapid the part over, or rapid the subspindle over, come in and clamp down at a position where we want to, clamp down, dwell, unclamp, send the main, or send the subspindle home so we get the part on our subspindle here. So I've now got my program for doing full main sub with all of the transfer in between the two using CAMWorks Standard. The other thing that, like I said, it gets you is the ability to do wrapped machining. So if you've got a fourth axis mill, for example, in here. Let's just adjust this coordinate system in here just so it's for a mill. So if I want my z-axis up here, let's just go and delete these here. I want my z-axis here, my x is the rotary axis in my mill. I go and say, hey, my coordinate system is this particular coordinate system. I'm going to do some fourth axis work in here. My rotary axis is about my x, and my y plane is my A0. Now what I can do is I can basically go in and put in a machining setup in here and use the wrap features. So I can go and do wrap pockets, bosses, slots, drive it down a particular profile, or do some engraving in here. And obviously I'm going to grab these particular wrapped geometry, set the end condition up here. I've got my pockets. I use my database still, so I can use my database throughout all operations, 4-axis, 5-axis simultaneous, milling, mill turn, turning as well. But now I've got my pot in here. Obviously my stock would probably be turned, but now I'm actually doing all of the wrapped geometry in here as well. So that's what you get when you go to CAMWorks Standard. The next level up from that is there's two different options depending on your type of equipment that you want to run and the types of pods that you machine. There's a CAMWorks milling professional and a CAMWorks turning professional. So anytime you would want to go to 3-axis milling, full 3-axis, basically this would be the version that you would want to use. So if you're doing mold work, if you're doing a whole bunch of different stuff, this would be the option you want to use. This will not only include 3-axis milling, but it will also include mill turn. So if you want to use 3-axis milling on the live tooling lathes, we would now support that. So you would get the dual spindle lathes and everything from all of the previous versions. So everything as you increase up the different versions, you will get everything beneath it. Parts and assemblies, you can do the full 3-axis toolpath as it says on the right down here, projection style toolpaths, constant step over toolpaths, pencil mill toolpaths. If you want to go in with like a lollipop cutter and do some undercuts, you can do all that with this particular version. And obviously the rotary milling for the wrap features as well. So that sort of equipment, basically if we go back to our break here, maybe if we wanted to switch it to a different configuration, maybe if we wanted the tool path to go, I don't know, up and over a surface over here, that's when I would have to use this particular version here. So let me just copy this one here. We'll just cancel that. So if I want to put in my up and over type surface, I'd be using something like a pattern project or a constant step over, pencil mill, or something like that basically. And then I go and insert my geometry. You can also insert it on top of any existing. So if you've got this, you could always right click and go, hey, I want to do a pattern project bit. These are all the additional options that you get when you're going to full 3-axis. The only other one you would get is you get the ability to do the undercuts using the multi-axis mill here as well. So if we wanted to go kind of anything which is up and over, like you're machining the mouse and you're like the computer mouse in your hand and you wanted to go up and over a surface, that's when you would have to go up to this package. So if we want to go in with a ball nose cutter, for instance, here, anytime the tool path is moving in X, Y, and Z at the same time is really when this is going to come in here. So if we wanted to kind of just do some semi-roughing using the pattern project here, this is moving in X, Y, and Z all at the same time. Obviously, I could fine tune it to get it exactly the way I want to. I could put in contain areas and avoid areas if I wanted to. Limit it to certain regions. Maybe I want to clean up that particular surface here. I can basically go in and control it to go and just basically put the tool path on that fillet, and it will now zigzag up and down that fillet basically. So I can go and fine tune my tool path to do what I want it to do. So anytime you're going up and over, that type of thing, you're really going to have to be looking at the Milling Professional package to get that type of tool path. The other thing that it gets you is the ability to do mill turn. So full X, Y, C, Z milling, basically. I've got an example here of a free hub that I used in a previous webinar for a bike. And this basically is the type of toolpath that you can do. So you can do full fixed milling, cylindrical interpolation, polar interpolation, and things like that. So in here we're mixing between, we're using our mill turn package now, so we're using our mill turn equipment down here, full main and sub spindle support. So we're doing facing on the main spindle here, doing a transfer, doing some milling. So this is the raft milling here, doing a cutoff, and then basically doing our milling on the opposite on our sub spindle as well. So our face milling over here, and then we can control all of the parameters to now do G112 polar moves and things like that in here. So and obviously you've got full simulation of all of those as well. So that's what you would get by going to the Milling Professional package. If the next package in the professional level is the CAMWorks Turning Professional. So say for instance you don't do a lot of milling, you want to focus more on your live tooling lathes. What you can do is you would get your 2.5 axis milling from the standard version of SOLIDWORKS CAM. So you could still do 2.5 axis milling, but if you don't do 3 axis milling, or you don't do a lot of 3 axis, and the area rough, the Z line or the water line in the flat area is good enough for you, what you could do is use this CAMWorks Turning Professional. And what this gets you is the ability to now do synchronous machining. So if you've got a part like the image shows there, where you've got an upper turret and a lower turret, or a front and a rear turret, some people refer to it as, you've got a dual turret machine with main and sub spindle, and you've got live tooling on it. Maybe you've got a Y-axis on there and a C-axis. All of those could be programmed in this particular version. The other thing that it gets you is the virtual machine standard. So what that allows you to do is not only just look at a chuck on the screen, but you can look at your turret, you can look at your machine housings, you can look at any fixtures or things like that in the way that are potentially in the way, and you can basically take the code that you simulate in the software and put that into a machine environment, so you can actually backplot what the machine would be doing, instead of just seeing just the part and just a chuck on the screen there. So that's a really nice option if you are more focused towards live tooling lathes and turning. And then CAMWorks Premium is the top of the line version, and it gets everything beneath it. So you want to do full 3-axis, you want to do full 4-axis simultaneous, you want to do 5-axis simultaneous, you want to do mill turn, you want to do B-axis equipment, things like that. You want to have the virtual machine standard. You've got some dual turret machines. You're lucky guys. Basically full-fledged, anything from 3-axis mills, routers, water jets, plasma tables, lasers, 4 and 5-axis simultaneous mills, dual turret lathes, live tooling lathes up to 8-axis. You can program parts and assemblies. You've got the volume mill 2D. You've got basically all of the turning features and the ability to program mixtures between turning and milling for the live tooling lathes. So let's take a look at maybe the simultaneous side of that. I've got a turbo impeller that is good for this type of 5-axis milling. So we've got an assembly here where we've got a chuck. Maybe this is the chuck that's just mounted on the trunnion in the UMC. We've got our coordinate system and everything else. In this case, I've got a SOLIDWORKS part file that's representing my stock right here. So I'm using that instead. And basically, if I want to go and program this particular part, I can go and tell it, hey, I'm machining from this particular direction. I'm going in and in this case, I'm just going to kind of do some finishing pass on these blades here. So I can go and say, these are the surfaces that I want to go and program. Here's my 5-axis milling operation. Let's go generate one of those. So I'll generate a multi-axis mill operation here, and then we can go and fine-tune the surfaces and do the tool path basically. So I go and grab a particular tool that I want to use, maybe a 1/4 inch here. We've got a tight radius at the bottom. I've got enough reach. Maybe we just increase this a little bit here just to make sure we've got enough reach on there. And then we can go and program our geometry here. So I want to go create a flow line so it kind of blends nicely between these. So it's using the upper edge of the blade here. And that's for the upper surface here. And then I want to use my lower surface. Let me just check I'm on the right blade here. I am not. So let me just create another one here. That's for my upper surface. For my lower surface here, I'm just going to use this radius at the bottom here basically to drive my tool path. So we've got our geometry in there. I wanted to make sure my clearance planes are set correctly, so I'm going to use cylinder about Z in this case. And then I've got all of the controls, and the kind of difference between CAMWorks and a lot of other CAM packages is if you're looking at 5-axis, you want the broad range of toolpath ability. If you do impellers, it's great. Go buy an impeller machining package, and that's all you do. But in the vast majority of situations, typically people are getting all sorts of different parts coming through the door. CAMWorks doesn't restrict you to a particular impeller machining module or a port machining module. If you get Premium, you've got full 5-axis, you've got everything basically. And that's basically what you're using in here. So if you want to do impeller machining, sure, go and use it. If you want to do swath cutting, you can go in here, set your side tilt angle to 90 degrees, and you're basically doing your swath cutting here. So we can hit preview on this, simulate what the toolpath looks like, and so on and so forth. We can do full area roughing in between all of the blades in this as well. So you can do full 5-axis roughing using this 5-axis simultaneous. We'll just give it a second here to generate. So I've got my toolpath in here. We can now simulate that toolpath as well. So we can simulate it using a step through as well, just to see what the machine movements are, see what the code looks like down at the bottom here, and see what's going on with the actual toolpath, see if there's any issues. We can obviously simulate it in full machine model here as well with the part and see what it's doing, see what the finish looks like, see if I'm going to clip anything else. Once I'm ready and I'm happy to prove that particular blade's okay, I can basically go and rotate it. I think there's 12 blades in here and 360 over 12, and basically get all of my other blades programmed by copying that same toolpath. So full 5-axis simultaneous You can do all of your B-axis if you're sticking this on a B-axis indexing lathe. B-axis Integrex or something like that, or a NTX 1000, something like that. Then basically you can go and do all of the full 5-axis simultaneous milling on your live tooling lathe as well, and get all the complex stuff going on there. So now on to the promotion. So at the this is valid until the 30th, I believe, the 30th of March 2018. There's a few different things going on. If you were looking at getting a new license of CAMWorks, then basically if you buy a seat of CAMWorks Standard, Professional, or Premium, so any one of the ones on the right here in the darker shades of gray, you get a second seat for 20% off. If you're an existing customer, maybe you had 2.5-axis milling or turning in the past, you've got that right now. Maybe your subscription expired, or you wanted to go, hey, you've gone current maintenance and you want to go, well, what can I get if I wanted to go to CAMWorks Standard? So if you wanted to update from an existing module license where you've bought a 2.5-axis mill and you bought maybe a separate turning module, and you want to go and look at, hey, what do I get from CAMWorks Standard? The prices are right here. So if I want to go from 2.5-axis milling or turning and go to CAMWorks Standard, if I've got a 2.5-axis mill license, by going to CAMWorks Standard, what I'm going to get is the turning with subspindle. I'm going to get volumill 2D and rotary milling as well, so wrapped 4th axis as well. If you wanted to go, if you got your 2.5-axis license and you want to go to the mill professional, for $4,000 you can basically go with full 3-axis with undercutting and mill turn, and everything obviously beneath that, obviously you get turning as well with subspindle and the rotary milling and the volumill 2D. If you wanted to go to turning professional, what you would get is you get mill turn, you get the synchronous machining, the dual turret programming, so you can synchronize spindles, the full virtual machine simulation standard, so you can actually simulate the machine environment rather than just the chuck and the tool on the screen there. And if you went to the turning professional, you would get everything in CAM Standard. You wouldn't get the milling professional as well. So if you go turning professional, you wouldn't get 3-axis milling. If you bump up to CAMWorks Premium, you would get 4 and 5-axis simultaneous mill turn, synchronous, virtual machine standard, 3-axis, rotary milling, volumill 2D, and then turning with subspindle, and that's for $8,800. And then similarly, obviously, if you're in a turning license here, if you'd get 2.5-axis milling by going to CAM Standard, volumill 2D, and then the rotary milling. You would, if you go to the milling professional, then you would obviously get 3-axis milling with undercutting and mill turn. Turning professional, you'd bump up to mill turn, synchronous, virtual machine standard, and then obviously 4 and 5-axis simultaneous down here. One note, if your maintenance is current, you would just keep your existing maintenance USP renewal date, and you would just pay the new renewal date from that point onwards. If you're off subscription or off maintenance right now, then you would basically have to get the 2 years of maintenance, as the note says down at the bottom there. If you have a 3-axis milling license right now, and you wanted to go, hey, what can I get if I upgrade to CAMWorks Milling Professional? Well, CAMWorks Milling Professional would then get you the turning with the subspindle, the rotary milling, volumill 2D, mill turn. Or if you go to Turning Professional, then you'd obviously get these ones down here, and then CAMWorks Premium, and so on and so forth. So this is what license you currently own. This is basically the different modules and what you would get on top of that, basically by going up to these different versions. Then obviously, if you've got 5-axis milling and you wanted to, maybe you just got a live tooling lathe that you've got on its way or has been delivered, for $2,160, you can basically go up to mill turn with subspindle, synchronous machining, and add all of these to your existing 5-axis license there. And I should note that these are US dollars, not Canadian or anything like that. So, and that's it for the presentation. So now we'll have some question time. So I'll answer that question. You have the SOLIDWORks Premium program. Suppose I want to cut out a lot of the same parts on a sheet of plywood for my students. Can that be done with 2.5D? You can do it with 2.5 axis, but you would need the professional version of SOLIDWORks CAM Standard, and that would allow you to get the assemblies. So then you could put all of the different parts into an assembly in SOLIDWORks, program all of the different assemblies in SOLIDWORks. There is a nesting option as well. So from the same company that produces CAMWorks, there's a tool called NestingWorks, which will allow you to take a part or an assembly and say, hey, I need 20 of these. Go and nest them onto a sheet. You tell it obviously the sheet, the orientations that are allowed for that particular part, and it will go and spit out a SOLIDWORks assembly that then you can program in either SOLIDWORks CAM Professional or CAMWorks. So I hope that answers your question. If not, just let me know and I can go into more detail with it.